Yo, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, obviously, we have to talk about what happened last night with Mike Perry and Jake Paul. It was an unexpected result, if I'm just being completely honest. I thought that Mike Perry was absolutely gonna wipe the floor with Jake Paul, and obviously we got the exact opposite of that. Now, before we go ahead and get into the breakdown of things, I would just like to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers. I would greatly appreciate that, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the breakdown. I think that Jake Paul performing really well against Mike Perry came at the surprise of a lot of fans out there, because not that many people actually thought that Jake Paul had a good chance against Mike Perry. But obviously, you know, Jake Paul did surprisingly really well. He was able to knock down Mike Perry in the first round, and that was absolutely crazy to witness, because that was a reoccurring thing that kept happening throughout the fight. And I think that there's not that many people out there who actually believed that Jake Paul could do these things to a fighter who is known to just coming forward and put crazy amounts of pressure on you. But I can't lie to you guys, you know, it kind of does feel like secondhand embarrassment at this point, because, you know, I cover MMA on this channel and all the MMA fighters just keep on losing to Jake Paul. And at this point, there should be no MMA fighter to freaking volunteer to fight Jake Paul at all, man. MMA fighters need to stick to MMA. You know, they need to do what they do good, and they don't have any business being in the boxing ring against Jake Paul anymore. Jake Paul needs to actually start boxing boxers that are in his same weight class. I know that he wants to be like the cruiserweight champion or anything. He should definitely start looking at some of those boxers. I think that a lot of those boxers would actually entertain the idea of Jake Paul, you know, potentially setting up an event, you know, to face him and whatnot. But yeah, no more MMA fighters should be fighting Jake Paul. Jake Paul should only be fighting boxers, real boxers, from this point forward, and it's up for the community to literally pressure him into doing so. No more MMA fighters, no more, please. Because at the end of the day, you know, MMA fighters, bare knuckle fighters or whatever, they practice a different sport, you know, than boxing. Boxing is not bare knuckle boxing, and it's not MMA. Like, the positionings, the setups, the way you approach a boxing match is completely different from how you would approach an MMA fight or how you would approach a BKFC bout. You know, like, the way you prepare, the way you attack, the way you defend is just completely different, you know. And yeah, obviously this isn't a good look for Mike Perry, you know, and especially the BKFC brand, you know, because Mike Perry, being a real legitimate fighter, you know, just got beat by a YouTuber. So you can only imagine that this isn't gonna sit well with a lot of people that support BKFC in terms of the branding, right? Because, you know, Mike Perry was supposed to win this fight. On paper, you know, Mike Perry was definitely supposed to outclass Jake Paul in every measure, because as we know, Mike Perry is a legitimate fighter. And obviously this is going to call to question the legitimacy of Jake Paul's win. And in my opinion, I feel like they're legit wins to a certain degree. I mean, like I said, he's not fighting real boxers, but I think that, you know, he's not trying to scam the viewers as well, because there's a lot of people saying that, oh, Jake Paul is definitely offering, you know, his opponents millions and millions of dollars to just throw the fight, which in my opinion, I don't think that that's true. You know, I think that there's a lot of fighters out there who have, you know, they're fighting for their best interest to win. You know, I don't think that there's a lot of fighters out there that are, you know, gonna take millions and millions of dollars to just throw a fight, because integrity, ladies and gentlemen, is still a thing. So I don't think that the narrative that Jake Paul is pretty much paying his opponents to lose, you know, it's a real thing in my opinion. But that is no excuse for Mike Perry. The way he fought and the way he performed, the way he approached the fight has no excuse at all, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people saying that, oh, you know, Jake Paul is the bigger guy. He freaking just physically dominated Mike Perry. Like, I get that argument, but at the same time, you know, there is no excuse for how Mike Perry chose to approach this fight, right? Because I think that from a positioning standpoint, you know, Jake Paul was just doing his thing. You know, he was out positioning Mike Perry. And Mike Perry is a guy who's supposed to have all the experience in the world because he's legitimately a real fighter. You know what I'm saying? But there is no excuse for why Mike Perry, chose to approach this fight the way that he did, and the argument that, oh, Jake Paul's just a bigger guy, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. But it's a decent win for Jake Paul. At the end of the day, he beat Mike Perry, a guy that a lot of people respect in the combat sports world. But let's just be honest, Mike Perry was coming into this fight, not really a fight, but like a boxing match with a 0-1 record. So is this really a great win for Jake Paul? Not really. It's a good win because he beat Mike Perry, who is a real fighter, but at the end of the day, Mike Perry is not a boxer, right? He's a BKFC fighter. Like I said, the approach to that is completely different. So beating a 0-1 guy in the sport of boxing, it's kind of weird the way some people are looking at this win, if I'm just being honest. But it's a decent win for Jake Paul because he beat a legitimate fighter. But in Jake Paul fashion, he did call out another MMA fighter / kickboxer in Alex Pereira. Now, in my opinion, I honestly don't think this fight is going to take place at all. I just don't see Alex Pereira entertaining that fight, if I'm just being completely honest. Maybe he will, but I just don't think that fight will ever materialize. Now, what I do want to see is Jake Paul actually challenging some cruiserweight fighters or some cruiserweight boxers right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and list a couple of these guys. Among boxing organizations, the least prestigious is generally considered to be the WBO. Now, if we go to the WBO rankings, there's some fighters that I would definitely like to see Jake Paul challenge, since he does want to be a cruiserweight boxing champion. Now, if we have to pick a guy that's between the 15th and the 10th, ranking, there's fighters like Jermaine Franklin, Martin Bacoli. If he wants to challenge somebody that's a little bit, in the higher rankings, there's also boxers like Daniel Dubois. There is a list of fighters that could honestly give Jake Paul, a real legitimate challenge. He still wants to go ahead and challenge, fighters like Alex Pereira for some reason, even though they're not boxers. And in my opinion, it doesn't make any sense for Jake Paul to challenge MMA fighters anymore. He needs a legitimate challenge, but we know why he's not going to take it. The last time he fought a real boxer, he lost. Now, Jake Paul's next challenge is obviously going to be Mike Tyson. And in my opinion, man, Mike Tyson better just come through and just put Jake Paul to rest, ladies and gentlemen. Man, that's what I want to see. But if my mind is telling me, anything based on what we saw from Jake Paul, I think that he's going to probably knock out Mike Tyson. Unfortunately, that's probably what's going to end up happening. I mean, based on what we saw tonight, Jake Paul is decent. He's pretty decent. He's going to be fighting a guy who is close to being 60 years old, basically a grandpa. And honestly, Mike Tyson has no business being in a fight with Jake Paul. And in my opinion, I feel like he's probably going to end up losing that matchup. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you guys think Jake Paul should fight an actual boxer now? Do you guys think that he is actually going to beat Mike Tyson in November? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, it's a pleasure. Peace out and have a good one.